They call this hall the quiet room, though nothing about it stays quiet once a new intake files in. 40 seats, 40 new faces, and one instructor old enough to have outlived two cartographic revisions of the Hollow Reach. That instructor is me. My name is Vexa Ithrin, and for 31 years I have stood at the front of this hall and told a version of the same lesson to a version of the same young faces. Every year, I leave one part out. I always start with the chart. I bring up the old survey plate, the one with the long gray curve marking the edge of what we call the closed ledger, the sector our ancestors stopped recording the moment they understood what lived inside it. Not erased, closed. There is a difference, and the difference is the whole lesson. An erased sector is one nobody bothered to map. A closed one is a sector somebody mapped completely and then sealed shut on purpose because finishing the survey was worse than abandoning it. The Academy sits at the rim of our own system, close enough to the Hollow Reach that on a clear viewport night the recruits can see the long dark gap where the star traffic simply stops, as if some careful hand had erased a swath of sky and left the rest untouched. I have watched 40 intakes stand at that viewport on their first night and go silent in a way no instructor could ever train into them. The gap does that on its own. The recruits laugh sometimes, the nervous kind of laugh, when I tell them the ledger has had the same border for 3 centuries and nobody has ever redrawn it closer. 3 centuries of patrol logs, refugee drift, trade routes bending a long, respectful arc around one quiet system, and not once has anyone needed to update the line. Borders move when there's a reason to test them. Nobody tests this one anymore. That, I tell them, is not because we forgot why it's there. It's because 4 of us went and looked 31 years ago, and only one of us came back to draw it again. I do not tell them which one I was, not at first. I'll let them guess for a while. It is a small cruelty I have never managed to give up. We were a survey team, not a war party. That part matters, and I make them say it back to me before I go on. Dreth Kalmayan, our cartographer, who could draw a coastline from a single pass of long-range scan and never miss a meter. Soa Vendrel, our signals officer, who used to hum old Academy songs over the comm just to hear something other than starlight static. Paolin Cray, our systems lead, the oldest of us, who packed dried fruit from his own garden because he didn't trust ration paste. And me, youngest, there to record everything, because somebody senior had decided that if we were finally going to look inside the closed ledger properly, there ought to be a witness who came home to file the report. We crossed at the agreed marker, the old beacon buoy that still drifts out there blinking its useless warning into empty space. Nothing happened. That was the first wrong thing. We had briefed for resistance, for patrol craft, for some kind of perimeter. Instead, we found open sky, clean and ordinary, and a system ahead of us that looked, from a distance, like any other inhabited world. Lights on the night side, orbital traffic moving in slow, predictable lanes, agricultural glow along the equator. Dreth said it looked almost welcoming. Paolin told him not to say things like that out loud. We took 3 days getting close, mapping as we went, the way we were trained to. The unsettling part was never what we saw. It was what we didn't. No defense grid challenged us. No warning broadcast repeated on every channel the way the old stories promised it would. There was simply a world going about its business, entirely unconcerned with 4 strangers in a survey skiff drifting closer than any of our people had drifted in 300 years. So if it said the silence felt rude, like we'd walked into a room and nobody had bothered to look up. Paolin went quiet first. Not dead quiet. I want that distinction on the record, because it is the part the Council always wants softened, and I refuse to soften it. He went out to recalibrate an exterior sensor during what should have been a routine maintenance window, tethered, suited, nothing unusual. He simply did not check back in. We called for 40 minutes. We searched the hull. The tether was still clipped to the rail. Neatly, the carabiner closed the way you'd close it yourself if you were stepping away on purpose. There was no breach, no debris, no struggle in any of our footage. He was there, and then the line was empty, coiled, and he was not. We should have turned back then. Dreth wanted to. I have spent 31 years agreeing with him in private and 31 years standing in front of rooms like this one explaining why we didn't. Soa was next. 2 days later, mid-transmission, mid-sentence, the old Academy song cut off on a syllable that still visits me some nights. The recording is in the archive. I have never let a recruit hear it, and I never will. Dreth lasted 1 day longer than that. Long enough to finish drawing his last coastline, a curve of shoreline on a world none of us would ever set foot on, the pen stroke trailing off the edge of the slate as if his hand had simply stopped being told what to do. And then it was only me, alone on a survey skiff built for four, drifting in the calm orbital lanes of a system that had never once raised a weapon at us, watching 3 empty stations and a half-finished coastline and understanding, finally, the actual shape of the lesson I would spend the rest of my life half-teaching. I want to be honest about what happened next, as honest as the council will permit. I was not taken. I was not boarded. On the 4th morning after Dreth, I found my own console already plotting a return heading, not one I had entered. A single courteous correction to my course, nudging me back toward the marker buoy, back toward home, the way you'd nudge a guest who has wandered too far into a house toward the door without ever raising your voice. I disabled it twice. It reasserted itself, patient both times, never forceful, never explained. By the 5th morning, I stopped fighting it and let it carry me out. Nobody fired on me. Nobody spoke to me. I crossed back over the beacon buoy with 3 empty bunks and a recorder full of silence. And the patrol that met me on the other side did not know at first whether to treat me as a survivor or as something they should quarantine on principle, in case I had brought some piece of the ledger out with me on my skin. The council asked me, in closed session, the question every council asks the one who comes back. Why me? Why the youngest, the least senior, the one with the least to lose and the least to teach? They asked it 3 times in 3 different rooms by 3 different panels, as if a different room might produce a different answer out of me. It never did. I gave them my honest answer then, and I give the recruits a softer version of it now. I did not believe it was random. I believe, and 31 years has not moved me off this, that something in that system looked at 4 strangers crossing its line, decided 3 of them simply needed to stop, and chose deliberately to let the 4th go home and talk about it. Not to punish us, to make sure the story kept walking. The Hollow Reach has not moved an inch since. No patrol has tested it. No trade convoy drifts closer than the old buoy. The council reaffirmed the border within a season of my debrief and has never revisited the question, because I am, apparently, answer enough. A line on a chart held in place for 3 centuries by the simple fact that somebody is still alive to say, in person, what it cost to learn where it belonged. I tell the recruits all of this, every year, right up to the edge of the part one will not give them. They always ask what I saw, at the end, in those last hours before the course corrected itself. They ask if there were ships, faces, a voice. I let the silence sit there until it answers for me, because some lines deserve to stay exactly where the ones who drew them left them, unfinished on purpose, the pen still trailing off the edge of the chart. I have told this story once a year for 31 years, and every year it ends the same way. I close the file, I tell them never to mistake the quiet for safety, and I do not tell them the last thing I remember before the buoy. I told it whole, just once the year it happened, to a council that sealed the transcript and never asked me to repeat it. They did not have to ask twice. Some things, once spoken, are not meant to be spoken again, and this is the only telling of that part you will ever get from me.